Well, thanks everyone for joining us today for the workshop. We're going to talk about the joint ventures with sheet feeders and paper mills. My name is John Lingle. For those of you that don't know me, I run the Shores sheet feeder sheet system throughout the United States in 10 plants, a little over 60 partners, and I've been doing this for quite a while, as has my distinguished panel here today. For those, and I'll introduce each of these separately, but for the format today, just want to let everybody know that each of the presenters, John, Jay, and Joe, will each give about a 15-minute presentation. They've prepared PowerPoint slides. At the end of their presentations, we're going to have a question and answer period. So I would encourage everybody, along with myself, going to try and ask as many questions as we can. The intent is really for the group to understand what the value proposition is and what is the value that people see in joining a sheet feeder, being aligned with a sheet feeder or a paper mill. So that's really what we're trying to get out. And as I said, I'd like any questions you have and an understanding of it, how it works, what it does. Now's the time to ask the questions. We got people here that have been associated with most of their working careers, so from that standpoint. So. If that's okay, I probably will start with, I think the order will be, as you see it, it'll be John, Jay, and Joe. So, everybody good? We should, I know we have a hard stop at 11:15 for golf. We should have no problem doing that. As I said, so we'll start with John. John Perullo, for those of you that don't know, John is president and CEO of Corrugated Synergies International. He has over 25 years experience in the corrugated industry, and beginning his career as a plant manager in the early 90s and continuing in the industry holding positions of general manager, operations manager, and vice president, all leading up to his current role. John has been a leader in developing 9 corrugator and printing facilities over the years, with many more on the horizon. So, John?
Yeah. Thanks, John.
Yeah, and just...
Thanks.
And I think they're going to do it from a sitting position, if that's okay. Is that all right with you guys?
We get a nice little teleprompter here.
Yeah.
So can everyone hear me? Yeah, okay.
You might want to raise that.
Okay. Can you hear me better now?
Yeah.
Great. Okay. So we were asked to give a presentation here based on some specific points, and so you can follow along with the PowerPoint presentation, and I was asked to talk about the history and success of joint sheet feeder operations. So as it pertains to CSI, the past 35 years have seen many independent sheet plants enhance their business model by vertically integrating sheet supply with CSI's partial corrugated ownership offering. So CSI has been around since 1983. I think I'll get to that slide in a little bit, but about CSI, we built 12 highly successful sheet feeders all over the country, up into Canada, and one in England and one actually in Chile. But we built 2 box plants for different groups that were a little bit different than the model that we're going to discuss here. And we've installed 17 state-of-the-art corrugators. CSI has always taken an approach of putting in the best tool for the job and really trying to push the technology along so that we could have more efficient, more effective operations. And we've had 60-plus sheet plant partners amongst those 12 sheet feeders. So many people who've been AICC members for several years, some that have been recently bought out, and others that are still around. So. As an innovative leader in the corrugated sheet feeding market, CSI developed and operated, as I said, 12 highly efficient sheet feeder operations. So a bit redundant there, but some more pictures. Starting with 10 Core in 1983, where my ex-partner and predecessor, Hans Koch, helped build for 10, I think it was actually 11, small sheet plants in the Toronto market. I'm not sure whether or not 10 Core was the first or if Jack Schwartz's company was the first, but they were somewhat simultaneous. And it was really the advent of the sheet feeder market in North America. So Since Tencor, many other independent companies and some integrated groups have used a regional corrugated method to solve the general problem of corrugated facilities significantly outpacing sheet plant capacity. That clearly continues on today. The corrugators, John's put in a 132-inch corrugator that's, they're starting to run towards and over 1,500 feet a minute. Sheet plants, having a box plant to try to eat up all the capacity coming out of that facility is futile, and hence the need for sheet feeders within a marketplace, or at least joint partners for the offtake. I think I'm a little stuck. Okay, so CSI has typically employed a hub and spoke arrangement for its sheet feeders. So we would build the hub of that being the sheet feeder. We'd have a regional group of small to large sheet plants, and we'd vertically integrate them in the industry, thus allowing them to better control their supply. As you can probably imagine, you tend to have more of a call on that when paper gets tight, like it is right now, and back in 1995 in those regions there was a huge push for people to better control their own supply, and so this system allowed any size sheet plant to obtain a share of a corrugated company with minimal investment. Back even as late as the early 2000s, and really right up to about 2009 when the banking and the world changed a bit, we had non-recourse financing and fairly highly leveraged companies to start up. So it allowed a very small sheet plant, 5 million square feet even, to become a partner and help capture some of the revenues in that vertice of this industry. So that's what I'm saying. For this reason, the historic ROIs were greater than average. If you have to put up a small amount of money and you get a decent return, it tends to be a pretty good ratio. Sorry, a little stuck again. All right, so what are the benefits? I was asked to talk about this. So you're never cut off by a supplier in a tight market. I know that doesn't happen to any of us openly, but the reality is, I think maybe when sheet feeders started, that tendency was a little bit more prevalent. It still happens in some ways. If you can't get your product for 5 or 6 days when you're used to getting it in 2 days, then in some way, in some measure, you are effectively cut off from your product. So the supplier, and what we tried to do in every one of our builds, was focus on service and quality improvements. We knew that the products are effectively commodities, so we wanted to focus in the areas that we could help improve and allow our sheet plant partners to capture more business, to grow quickly, and to alleviate some of their problems with inconsistent supply. And back to maybe even the first point here, but an unbridled opportunity to grow in the marketplace. So one of the things that we recognized with our sheet feeders, whether we had companies that were 10 years old or 30 years old, prior to becoming part of a sheet feeder, they had effectively plateaued. And I believe that is, whether consciously or subconsciously, if you're buying products from your competitor, at some point they're not going to let you grow too far. When we recognized on average a growth in our sheet feeder group, that we would see about a 50% growth within the first 2 years of companies that had stopped growing effectively, because we could give them newer products, because we could give them shorter runs, we always sought to give better delivery times than whatever the market average was, or whatever the market best was, and then move on from there. So also we reduced the need for stock sheets, slitters, time spent buying sheets. That, for the most part, has gone away now, I think, but certainly 15 years ago, 20 years ago, that was, people in sheet plants had a lot more slitters, had a lot more stock sheets, and again, I think that was a product of buying from mostly integrated groups. And also a share and caption of margin in sheet manufacturing. So it is there is margin in making sheets, and these independent sheet plants, what we saw, when they got a return on doing what they had to do already, and then they reinvested it back into their own companies, whether it was buying other companies or buying new equipment, it just started to build momentum on itself. So. And then more control and opportunities with substrate choices. When you're buying if you're buying from a local integrated group, they tend to want to sell you the stuff that they make. We were able to buy the best product and the best tool for the job, and really, I think meet all the needs or even create better opportunities for partners that were unaware that there were other options. So I was asked to talk about what are the downsides. So, and I broke this up into two different parts. So the downside of the CSI model, the hub and spoke model, I think, for me, and I've run smack into this over the last several years, but the lack of equity in the companies allows the partnership to really put you into a consultant role, where I think we spent a lot of time building businesses, but it is what it is. I think we waited too long to pivot away from that, and that's a move that we're making now. But the other downside, or difficulty, I should say, is that multiple entrepreneurs will be difficult over some time. I think that's not meant to be a joke, but it's certainly funny. I mean, we all know that. Everybody who owns a sheet plant is is an entrepreneur, and they have their own ideas, and becoming part of a group is difficult for many people. And John knows this. I think everybody here knows. But when you're fighting through a startup, everybody's there's some difficulties, and you get through it. And then when you're in kind of a growth mode and things are going well, you tend to all be very much aligned. And then when you really start making money, then you start to have other problems. But it is, all in all, I was just asked to talk about the downsides. It's a difficulty. It's not, it's not the hardest thing to overcome. And then from CSI model, I've really believed that the better we built the company, and what you try to do when we're all building any businesses is that you try to make it self-sustaining. You try to make it so that it's continuously improving, and you're driving that emphasis into the employees there. But in a model that we built, and it's the opposite, I would say, of what everybody else up here has done. The better we built it, the easier it was to get rid of us, and I fully appreciated that every time it happened. But it happens. But then I want to talk also just about the general downsides of the sheet feeder model, because I think it's good to take a look. But there are additional freight costs compared to having a box plant, right? You're shipping product twice. I think that's something that's very factorable, but we could always overcome it by the additional efficiencies. Swiss Army knife requirements I wrote up. When you're building a business, say like a 10-core or any other facility, if you have 6, 7, 8 different sheet plant partners, a lot of them have similar business, but then there's also all kinds of niches, right? Somebody's running titanium coated, somebody's wants to have E-flute and F-flute and tear tape and all kinds of other things. You have to be able to run all of them. That is not the most efficient way to run a corrugator. It can be the most profitable way, though, when you get it to run the right way. And then also what I alluded to earlier, that a sheet feeder model, an independent sheet feeder model, requires a long-term focus. You can almost always go out and buy sheets at a lower price from somebody else, especially when someone knows what your price list is. I think we all understand that. So people have to focus on it, and that's why you have to, as quickly as possible, get into a profitable situation, because then the value is easy to see, but until you get to that point, it really, you try to keep people focused on the long term. I think that might be my last slide, but let me see. Yep, that's it.
As I said, there's going to be questions afterwards, so if you guys, while the guys are presenting things, if you have any questions come up for this individual person, if you just kind of jot them down so I know, and then when everybody's done, we'll have some questions, and we should have plenty of time, so it should not be an issue. So next up is Jay Carmen. Let me introduce Jay. Jay's been working at Standfast for over 32 years, and he's currently president of Standfast. In 2015, Standfast and Atlantic Packaging created a new joint venture called Blackhawk Corrugated. Currently, Standfast and Blackhawk are located in the same 360,000 square foot facility in Carroll Stream, Illinois. So,
Well, thank you, John.
Jay?
Okay, I'd like to start out with giving a little background of Standfast. So, my dad and his soon-to-be partner worked in sales and as sales managers at International Paper and Georgia Pacific. And so in the mid-'60s, they decided to strike out on their own. They bought a bandsaw to sell corrugated pads out of John Morris's garage, and they quickly outgrew the garage. So they moved in 5,000 square feet in Addison. And so, they got through the startup phase, so that leads us, if it goes, to the 70s. They purchased a 20,000 square foot building, again in Addison. They added, some used converting equipment and just really built up the sheet plant. And, like a lot of companies at that time, they were just building their business. And then that led to, in 1982, they purchased a two-color Aisawa Flexifolder gluer, and they had to add 15,000 square feet to the plant to house it. Then they added a two-color rotary die cutter, so they were running two-color rotary die cut cartons in the early 80s. So, and then in 1985, I came into business in sales, and that was the beginning of the second generation coming in. And then my brother Keith came in 1989 in sales. And then shortly after that, my brother Scott came in. So there was three of us in sales. And so we were growing the business, and we were working out of 35,000 square feet. We were landlocked, so in order to grow, we had to make a move. So we decided to buy some property in Addison again and build a new 65,000 square foot plant. And then the fourth brother came in 98, I believe. It was a year or two after we moved. So John came in production, and that really helped us. So then that leads to the 2000s. That's been a interesting time. Since 2003, we've had 500% growth. We started a lean initiative. We adopted 5S, quick change procedures, really improved our productivity. And since we had success with that, we really took it to another level with, we have our version of a team-based system that really escalated the empowerment and engagement of our workforce. So we enjoyed some really good growth. And then we did have a hiccup in 2008, like a lot of people. And so fortunately, that didn't last long, and we got back on our growth path. And then in 2010, we pretty much completed the transfer of the first generation to the second. So we bought out my father, and so that leads us to, we did add another 25,000 feet also to the existing 65,000. So we were in this situation again where we couldn't expand the plant anymore. We were landlocked again. So then we had to figure out, what was our next step. If we were limited by our space, we had a complex mix, I would say. We were running your, basic brown boxes. We were running 2-color, 3, 4-color, multicolor direct print label. So about 70–80% of our mix was multi-pass, and we were running small and large quantities. So we were doing a lot of things in a relatively small footprint, and also our volume was growing. At that time, I think we were up to over 40 million square feet, and of course, we did have a really good sheet supply base in our market, and of course, John over the years, from time to time, was helpful to us over the years, but we saw the landscape changing, as has been discussed a lot the last couple of days. The consolidation was happening. This was like 4 or 5 years ago, and it's only accelerating now. So we were getting very concerned about our raw material supply, our sheet supply. So in order to meet our growth plans, we had to relocate, we had to expand, we had the third generation coming in, and for a long time we just weren't part of a consortium, but I think the advantage there was we were able to really focus on improving our sheet plant, but it just got to the point where we just needed to take that next step. We also, needed the financial means, the operating expertise, the decisiveness, the flexibility, and the action bias to, going from 90,000. The next move we made, it was that was. It's not like an incremental. We're going to add 50,000 feet. But as a manufacturer, you have to add a lot of infrastructure, and it's not like expanding a warehouse. So it was like, if we didn't make a move at some point, we had to make some big decisions. So this brings us to why Atlantic, because they basically fulfilled all of these characteristics we're looking for. They're a successful company that I thought, we all thought that we could partner with them, and they gave us an opportunity to have a seat at the table to really address our long-term supply needs. And then so we decided to start a joint venture called Blackhawk Corrugated. It started out as a sheet feeder partnership, and because of the scale and the resources and wherewithal of Atlantic, it's become a very close business relationship that's been, there's been a lot more benefits than I ever really anticipated. So I did want to just go over some of the strategic advantages of working with them. One of the main advantages is we think long-term, we have the opportunity to vertically integrate. They have 3 paper mills, a secure source of supply. They have preprint opportunities, tighter process control, improved speed to market, and it really helps expand our product range and provide a broader customer mix. So another important strategic objective we thought long-term was to have a good quality 100% recycle partner. And also, we would like to we think it'll be necessary to be able to run lighter weight liners. And then, so having the corrugator and the sheet plant in the same building, with the tight, we're talking 10 truckloads a day. I think are helping the environment by not, using so much energy. So, the corrugator started up in the fall of 2015. And, some features of the corrugator, it's 110-inch high speed. It runs single, double wall, B, C, and E flute, several combinations, runs all the quantities you want. And it has cut-to-mark capabilities, so we've been able to take advantage of pre-print opportunities in the market. And their quality has been, I think there's a misconception sometimes with recycled board. We've experienced really good quality from them, so that's been a benefit. So just to wrap it up, we're been at this I think we're through the startup stage, and I can't imagine how we could have gotten through this without the help of a company, without Atlantic's help. They provided a seat at the table. They've been tremendous to work with to really help us navigate through this. It's a very complex move. It's, we went from 90,000 feet to 360,000 square feet, and this was quite an undertaking. And I think now, I think we're through all that, and we're sitting there with a state-of-the-art corrugator and a full-service sheet plant, and in the same building. And I think it's a compelling value. So we're excited about the future, and so other than that, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jay. Again, questions, jot them down so we have them, because I think we'll have plenty of time for questions. So, next up is Joe Palmieri. Joe's been with Jamestown Container for over 34 years. He's currently serves as the president of their corrugated packaging group. The corrugated packaging group consists of 4 manufacturing facilities with over 365 employees serving Ohio, Pennsylvania, and the New York markets. So,
Thanks, Joe.
Joe?
Good morning, everybody. What we're going to do is we'll give you, get the slide working.
Oh, there you go.
Which one, Jay?
Yeah.
To the right. To the right.
Oh, to the right. Oh, yeah, to the right.
There it is. All right, we'll give you a brief overview of Jamestown, then we'll talk really about some of the strategic investments we've done over the years. Jamestown Container started in 1956 by Glenn Janowski. That's Glenn sitting at the table right there. That's the local paper from Jamestown, New York, March 27th, 1956, announcing the starting of a container plant in a little town called Faulkner, New York. Is right next to Jamestown. Started with 5 employees. Many of you know my father. He was one of the 5 in 56. That's my dad right there. So this was, if you go from 1956, work your way up to today, we're serving basically the Great Lakes, Lake Erie up through Lake Ontario. So you're looking at Cleveland, Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse, working our way east towards Albany. So we've grown from 5 employees to 6 facilities, 485 employees. It's made up of 3 sheet plants, a foam fabricating protective packaging facility in Lyons, New York, contract packaging, fulfillment place in Buffalo, and North Tonawanda is the sheet feeder itself. All right, talk about our investments. We start, I'll go through each one of these, but 1994 is the Green Pack Mill. 2006 is Graphcore, which is litho-laminating and converting facility. In 2008, we did Niagara Sheets, which is the sheet feeder. In 2013, we did the Green Pack Mill. A little about all of these. 1994, the original partners on the Solvay paperboard mill, located in Solvay, New York, near Syracuse, was Jamestown Container, Schiffenhaus Packaging, and Southern Container were the original partners. About 1997, 1998, Tencor came in as well to be a partner in Solvay. 100% recycled mill. It started with one paper machine, grew to 3 paper machines. We were in that partnership from 1994 to 2008. And at that time, you guys remember that Rock 10 purchased Southern Container. Because when Southern got purchased, we sold our interest. The mill now is run by WestRock. Many of you know Jim Porter with WestRock. He was a Southern Container employee that ran the Solvay mill for us. And Jim went on to have a pretty decent career, I guess you would say. Graphcore's litho-laminating facility located in Dayton, New Jersey. That opened up in 2001. We entered into a partnership with them in 2006 with Disc Graphics, us, Jamestown Container, and Southern Container, and really did it to strengthen our high-end graphic capabilities. Rock 10 became a partner with the Southern acquisition in 2008, and today, currently, the partners are us, Disc Graphics, and WestRock. Moving on is Niagara Sheets in 2008, which is a sheet feeder located in North Tonawanda, New York. 110-inch BHS corrugator. The partners are Jamestown Container, and Rampack, the original partners, and Smurfit Stone. This one's probably different where you have an independent and 2 integrated, with the independent being the majority owner and the operating partner. So I'm not sure that happens too often, but it was important for us. I think at the time, John, Smurfit may have had 100 corrugators. And their Rampack probably had 30 corrugators at the time. We got 1. So obviously you want to be in control of the partnership itself and the operation. So that's what we ended up doing. You fast forward today, the original operating agreements were 10 years. Things have been just redone. We're still the majority owner and operating partner. Other partners now include Buckeye Corrugated Inc., Cascades, and WestRock. And the last thing is the Greenpack Mill. The font can be any smaller. Greenpack, and I'm going from memory because I can't see it. I know you can't now. Construction began in 2011 and opened up in August 2013. Partners are Cascades, Containerboard Partners, which is made up of Coil, Pierce Wellwood, and Royal Container, and us, Jamestown Container. Output of 540,000 tons, a 328-inch machine, 100% recycled, lightweight mill. Started operating in summer of 2013. That's just some of the construction. That's it. That's a quick overview, and I think we'll get into some questions and talk more specifics now, okay?
Thank you, Joe. I think this will open up our question and answer, or question period for all 3 of the candidates. So I would invite anyone who has any questions at this time to raise your hand, and I'll try and, okay, we got a question back there.
Yeah, so the question has to do with the flexibility and starting up a sheet feeder, or building in flexibility so that you can go after niche markets. I do think it's something that we've always tried to employ, but it's usually based on whoever the constituents are, and then maybe sometimes CSI or whoever the partner is who's leading, the operational partner who's leading that, sees a niche that's coming or about to come or going to come soon thereafter, and you want to at least build the space into that corrugator, or actually start out and try to lead the growth into that market. So I think there's many many examples of that happening, but yeah, those are things. Whenever you're building a new corrugator, I think you want to try to build into it, especially for a multitude of partners that you have to build in and sit down with them and go over what their growth plans are and what their current needs are.
Okay. Next question. Okay.
So think that's probably
Somebody
a
want to answer
question.
that?
Probably,
Yeah, that's probably a question for me based on how we have built sheet feeders. The question is, how do you deal with multiple partners wanting product at the same time, and then also if there's other, I guess, better opportunities within the marketplace. So for us, the way we always built our requirement supply agreements or arrangements were, if the new venture can make that product, then you're required to buy a certain percentage, most times 95% from that venture, right? That's what creates the win-win situation. But if there's an inability to supply, you have to be able to react to that quickly. As far as who gets their product first, the answer is always everybody, right? So certainly you would get yours first, and so would you guys. The reality is you have to become a proficient producer, and you have to be able to have ways to get out, to catch up and get out in front of things. But sometimes you're making sausage, and you just don't want anyone to see that. So at the end of the day, you have to deliver, and so you build a system that has some open capacity, and then hopefully you end up filling up that corrugator as quickly as possible. But the answer is everyone gets it first.
Answer the question? Good. Next question.
What is your lead time? So you get in order of time, it gets something next morning.
Okay, the question is, what is the lead time? And I would, let's, Baby Joe, if you want to talk about Niagara and Black Hawk, let's just spread it around a little bit. Joe, if you want to answer that,
Yeah,
for
I'll
speaking on behalf
talk
of Niagara.
about Janice's questions and dovetail a little bit back to the other one. For us, the sheet feeder, the mill, particularly the sheet feeder, is separate from the box plants. I run the packaging side, I've got the box plants. We've got totally separate company, totally separate management. Glenn Giles, who's our president of Niagara Sheets, they run Niagara Sheets. I have absolutely nothing to do on the sheet feeder side. We're in a weird industry where your partners are your competitors. So, we're slugging it out on the box side, and they're trying to deal with it on the sheet feeder side. So for us, we keep it separate. So the lead time is whenever it needs to be. I'm ordering today for tomorrow. I'm ordering today for today. It's up to him to figure it out.
Jay?
Yeah, as far as the corrugator goes, we can get sheets same day, so that's not the issue. So for us, it's more of the converting capacity that affects our lead time right now, but that's the advantage of having the corrugator right next door. I mean, we have a quality issue, or we need to get, or there's a reject from Black Hawk, they may have some warp board, and we need to make up an order. I mean, you can just make it up in 2 or 3 hours, so that's a huge advantage for us. So.
Okay. John, you want to?
Yeah, I would agree. It's whatever the customer needs, and I think we've had some pretty aggressive partners and customers within our group, and people that needed and had a growth model based on having same day. So we had some facilities that were 50% of the business was same day business, and others that were normal multiple partners who were regular 2 and 3 day order groups, and you kind of grow into as quickly as possible whatever those needs are.
Right. Just I'll speak from our systems. About between 65 and 70% every day is next day for our sheet supply system within the Shores group, Shores Partners. So. Next question. Okay, the question really is, if there's a specific niche product that you want within the sheet feeder, and only one partner wants it, how do you divvy that up? Does the one partner pay for the capital, or how do you make that decision whether or not to invest in it? So, somebody want to jump on that?
Yeah,
one?
I'll jump on it.
Okay, Joe.
For us, it's in the operating agreements. So, and again, we have separate management, so you've got the partners, but it still comes down, in our case, Niagara Sheets, it's what's in the best interest of Niagara. Because that's the business, that's the company. So it's up to them. And then the partners, if you're going to buy any type of capital expenditure, then it's shared by the partners. But it's up to Niagara to present it back to the partners in that board of why they need it and what's it going to do, and just like any business.
Same?
Yeah, I would agree with what Joe said, with the exception of maybe there's some stuff we've had at startup. a guy has a laminator, and so he wants single-face product run, and nobody else. So we've had instances where that person's paid for that capital project, and that person's had some exclusivity rights there. But it really is a case-by-case basis. But in general, you want the partnership to act as partners and for
Act as a
people to
separate
invest together.
Okay, good question so far. Another question?
Jay, did you say you're 100% recycled?
Yeah, from the board from Atlantic is 100% recycle. But we still offer virgin. We have other suppliers, so yeah, we offer, we're still a sheet plant, and, you know, we still have a lot of customers that require virgin, and so we have, you know, whatever the customer needs, as long as it makes economic sense, we'll do it. Yeah.
You guys got to come up with some tougher questions.
Yeah,
man. You
John,
guys
I
are
got
making
some
it
stuff
way
I
too easy
could-
on these guys.
John, there's some things we could talk about, maybe all, you know, one, why do it? Why get into these investments, or why get into these partnerships? You know, for us, it's be able to control and influence your supply chain. That's a big part of it. The other reality is, you know, you might be big, but there's always somebody bigger. You know, we're not big enough to do a paper mill on our own. We're not big enough to do a sheet feeder on your own. You got to have partners. And you guys, all of you that know my dad, it took us a while to get over the fact that you don't always have to be the majority owner. That it's okay being a minority partner in some of these relationships, as long as you got the right agreements that protect you and protect your interests.
Greg.
Question? Greg? Okay. Yeah, the question was, when you start up these joint sheet feeders, you know, and get involved with them, there's a commitment on volume. So the question is what happens if a partner doesn't meet that commitment of volume? A couple of things. It depends. First of all, it depends on how the agreement's structured. I'll speak on behalf of most of ours, or pretty much all of our agreements are structured such that it's a percentage of your sheet requirements and or a total target commitment on footage. Our agreements over the years have been modified to that, because if you're a sheet plant that has 10 million square feet a month, that, you know, you say that's what I'm going to commit because that's what I'm buying, and you lose your major customer that's, you know, 30% of your business, then what do you do? So our agreements are structured such that they're a percentage of your sheet requirements and or a target footage. And if you have the available footage and you do not meet your minimum, we have what we call a take or pay, which means you are going to be required to pay and make up the difference of that based on a certain contribution percentage. So it's pretty much a take or pay deal. There's not the ability to get in and get out. You make a commitment, you have to live with it. And, but that's only if there's footage available. And that's a big concern for a lot of people. It's like, hey, if I lose, you know, customers, or I go through, if I make a commitment for this and 2008 or 2009 happens again and I'm short, what happens with that? So that was a big concern of our partners. So, John?
Yeah, I would agree with John that we typically have, or we've always had, requirement supply agreements that are pretty, they are firm contracts that give a little bit of flexibility, but in general, not too much. So there's really two different scenarios that you're asking about, Greg. That, you know, one is if you're open in discussing and you're having business problems and you go below your threshold, usually you try to deal with those people the right way and come up with solutions to maybe even help them. And the other scenario is when someone's hiding that from you, right? And I'm sure, both had to deal with both of these things, and maybe you guys also. So, the instance where somebody's hiding it, we've created systems and evolved systems of different ways to deal with it. But all, you know, in the worst case scenario, we've actually taken the share away from somebody and had to go to court. That's the last resort. You never want to do that. But at the end of the day, you have to protect the other partners, and it's our role to do so, and you have to protect the interest of the company. So if someone's going to come in and try to be deceitful there, you have to be able to be prepared and ready to deal with it. But you build around that, and you try to do your best to always avoid that. But it happens.
Speaking to the same thought here, going back to 2008 when we all know what that was like, there had to be some sort of adjustment in play from your point of view, so otherwise you all would have been out of business at that particular point. So these contracts that you put in place with your partners, is there some feature within that that allows the economy to help also renegotiate where you're at that particular point in time without losing your share within the partnership and protect the entity itself for long term?
You want to start with that, or?
I'll let you start.
Okay, yeah, so I think in general, we always use percentage, right? So there is, you're not out of bounds at all because of an economic setback or a whole shift in the economy like we've seen in 2001, at the end of 2001, or in 2009/10. And typically, we've had a lot of acquisitions, as everybody's seen now, with an integrated group buying out an independent, so they become a partner in there. At that point, you can't use a percentage of volume because they're enormous companies. WestRock's one of our partners in a group, and almost every group's had an integrated group. So you set a volume there, and then usually you will use some sort of a market, something out of one of the indices to be able to gauge up and down what their requirements will be based on any of those temporary or even long-term market changes. But for the independent groups, the last, and I want to make sure I'm clear, the last thing you want to do is ever take a share away. And it's only happened once, and it's because it was completely deserved of the group that happened to it, and it was to protect the rest of the group.
Okay. More questions?
There we go. Are the partnerships based off of volume, or are they equal partners? So if you've got a corrugator 100 million feet and one guy's 50 million feet, the other 4 comprise of the other 50 million feet, how do you split that pie up?
I'll start on that and speak up. First of all the models are a little different. Probably 90% of ours are the same, but there's a little few tweaks to them. The impact there is really on how you distribute the earnings. Most of our arrangements are set up where we have a return on equity, a return on the invested capital as a base level. It's a relatively small amount. And then what we do is divide up the remaining profits based on sales volume. So for example, plant makes $1 million. Volume is 10 million in sales. If you're 8 million of the 10 million, you would get 80% of the $1 million that's generated in profit. We found that to be, some of our models have been modified over the years, but we found that currently to be the most equitable, because then the larger the player and the more he brings to the table as far as volume and generating revenue, then he gets a bigger piece of the pie on distributions. So that's how we've evened it up. I don't know specifically with yours.
Yeah, ours are, as John said, they're different for each business, but in general, there is some equity component and some contribution or sales component to it. And we've had everything from a migration to 100% contribution to companies that are 50% based on equity. And it really, as Joe talked about earlier, you build that into the business model so that it is a member-managed business with what we put together in an LLC structure. So it naturally occurs. If everybody started out near 20 million square feet and someone grows to 100, that person's going to be pulling in one direction, and so you end up voting your shares, but we typically have similar equity in the LLC structure. Everyone will have the same amount of equity, but distributions will be different. But we've also migrated to models where there's via buyouts or even starting points that there are different equity levels, and then you, I think, tend to migrate more towards an equity-based distribution. So they're all different, but they are, everybody who's a partner to it has a say and a vote, and you'll migrate it. Sometimes you'll vote even where it doesn't help you, but it helps the company, and then that will help you later on.
Question?
Can't see anyone there.
Other questions? I'll throw out one question, and that is just for the group. How do you identify partners or potential partners?
I mean, I could tell you how we did. I think every single deal we've done and every acquisition we've done came out of the relationships formed either AICC since 1974 or Fiberbox Association since 1969. Every single one out of those two groups of the people you met.
So these are people that you knew
the relationships. It's the people in this room that you meet over the years, and you start identifying who's in your market. We knew Smurfit, when we did Niagara Sheets, had a couple old corrugators they were going to shut down. We knew a couple were in our market. We had an old one as well. So you start the conversations. Hey, what if we shut this one, you shut that one, and we do one together? That's just how it starts.
Okay. Questions? Other questions?
If you're in a sheet feeder joint venture, are there any change of control provisions pushed down to the members? So could the sheet feeder joint venture override a potential change of control of one of the participants?
Okay, so the question is if one of the, if you have 5 members in a sheet feeder, one of them wants to sell, could the remaining 4 prevent the sale? Or do they have to prove the sale? Is that the question?
Yes.
Okay, that's the question. I guess I'll have to answer that. The answer is potentially yes, but I think the terminology and the language we use, and I'm not a lawyer, is that approval will not be unreasonably withheld.
Correct.
And that's further defined as, is the potential new partner creditworthy? And will the potential new partner willingly and openly, before they get into the agreements, acknowledge all the agreements and declare their intent to live up to all of the agreements? So it's pretty simple. I will tell you we've had no denials. We've had nobody that's been turned down, in my experience.
Yep.
Yeah.
And we have similar provisions. There is also a mechanism that allows the unchanged partnership group to be able to repatriate their percentage of that share. But obviously that would create a situation with the incoming partner. So it's hardly ever happened, or it really has only been, there's been postured before. It's never gone through because it affects the deal there and then it gets renegotiated. But in general, there is a protection that you have, but we've never come to the point where anybody has been so undesired to take over a partner's plant.
Yeah, I'll comment, John. I mean, with similar provisions, the existing partners can buy that partner out. But, Greg brought a question up earlier. Every one of us, either on the sheet feeder side for footage or the mill side for tonnage, has a take or pay. So if the other partners buy the other one, then you've got to be able to have the footage to commit. So, and you've got to be smart about what you're committing, because you risk your company. If you're doing 1 billion square feet, you don't want to commit 1 billion square feet. It's too risky. But the benefit is that, like when Niagara opened and some of the other things we've done, you've got the partners committed to the footage that the moment you open, you're going to make money or at least break even because you've got the footage committed. So it's all goes hand in hand. Can the partners get the footage, or whoever's buying somebody else, maybe they become your new partner. There's a lot of possibilities.
Question?
Sure. A quick question for you. Some of you are tied to mills or have relationship with mills. So does your feeder relationship and partnership and ownership extend to the mill? Number one. And number two, do you see that as a future trend of being a feeder partnership and have an ownership into a mill system?
Well, that's a great question. That, as I stated in my presentation, that is a long-term goal of ours, but we're not part of a mill right now, but that could be down the road. So,
I mean, Jim, there's certainly an incentive, and you'll see in our case, the mill partner we did and the sheet feeder partner, there's some common partners. Cascades owns the mill. They're also a partner in the sheet feeder itself, as well as we are. So there's some incentive for the partners to certainly get that paper and leverage the supply chain.
Any comments? Just on behalf of our group, obviously we have the Shores Group has a relationship with New Indy Container Board, which is a joint venture with Crafts and the Shores family, and Although we do buy some paper from them, that's really on an arm's length transaction, so there's really no ownership currently with any of our partners related back into the mill system. To expand upon that, do I think that in the future that's something that could come out? I would say yes. But it is a exponentially greater capital requirement typically than a normal sheet plant would be engaged in. You know, we're not talking about a $25, $30 million sheet feeder. We're talking about a $500 to $500 million, $750 million mill. I mean, it's just a rather different scenario. So, yeah. So. More questions?
Speaking of the future, we all kind of have an idea of how the sheet feeders are organized and set today as a model. How do you see it in 5 or 10 years from now? Is it significantly different? So you're planning for something that's different, or is it going to change in design?
Who wants to tackle that one?
I mean, I'll tackle
5
where I
years from
think
now,
it's
what do you
going.
see
and
happening?
John, I'll let you tackle one. The sheet feeders? I think sheet feeders will continue. You know, we've given some thought. Can you do the same thing on a Flexa?
Yeah.
Okay, can you get a bunch of independents to buy a couple evolves? I think, you know, I've kicked it around in my head many times. I think the problem you've got is more on the customer end. You know, selling that box, because you all got to basically have the same price at that point. You know, it's a lot easier on the sheet, and then we all put our, you know, finishing touches as box makers and service and those kind of things on it ourselves from the sheet standpoint. I think it's doable with digital. The partners getting together and coming up with one digital location or plant. Because to me, it's just a sheet then. Then it goes to the individual partners, and you convert and you sell it based on your merits at that point. So that's what I think will happen.
Yeah, I would agree. I certainly think as it pertains to digital, there's both a price point and the ability for an individual sheet plant to eat all the volume that's going to come off of the next generation of single pass digital printers. That creates an opportunity for a shared partnership there to be able to get the independents to integrate into that group. But I think as far as sheet feeders go and where that's going to, I think we're almost, I mean, we're all waiting for this IP Smurfit Kappa takeover here, I guess it's almost called now, a hostile takeover. And there may be one more integration level, and then I believe the pendulum's going to swing backwards, and I think we're going to have similar situations with key employees, key salespeople. The independent marketplace started, as you heard Joe, almost every independent company that's in this industry started the same way. They started somewhere, they got tired of dealing with an integrated company that maybe wasn't supporting their customer base, many of them were salespeople, and they put out their shingle and with a single piece of equipment and then grew from there. Those opportunities, I think, are going to be, they're going to come out again, because I think what the independents do is better service the customers the integrated groups do. And the larger the integrateds get, the larger the customer that they're not servicing becomes. And I think at that point we're going to see a little bit of a rebirth. I'm excited about what's going to happen for the independent groups here at AICC.
Okay. Question in the way back?
Question for Jay. When you put the corrugator in, you put it in the same building. Can you just speak to a little bit some of the immediate advantages you saw having your sheet supplied literally under the same roof? But also, how do you deal with? Because I'm assuming, I don't know the ownership arrangement, but I'm assuming obviously you own the sheet plant where you're a partner in the corrugator. How do you deal with? Do you have a conversation with yourself in the mirror, or what do you do? What do you do when you're not happy with something? So.
Yeah, it does get a little complicated, but the advantages are, I think the biggest advantage right now for us, and I think John just alluded to it, is what we see is with the bigger guys getting bigger, with us investing in a corrugator sheet plant, I think the marketplace is very receptive to that, because they're not getting serviced as well as the independents, and we experience our customers with some startup issues, like any corrugator situation, and moving the plant. It was very disruptive. So, our customers was like going, "Come on, guys, can you get your act together? We really need you." So that's why now that we're settled in and we're turning the corner, we're very excited about the opportunities. And I think the perception, part of the benefit is that our customer base are the larger customers that we're going after, larger CPGs or the mid-sized CPGs. We're not, when my dad was calling on customers, they were, little mom and pop shops. So we've evolved out of that, and I think our customers, perceive us as being a lot larger, and we're benefiting from that.
I'm going to ask a question, Jay, just to follow up on that, similar. Tell us, because I'm sure there's a lot of people in here that have thought about, hey, what if I put in my own corrugator? Tell us the good, the bad. Tell us the surprises that you've gone through in the last couple of years.
Well,
just give us the whole story.
If it wasn't for Fosbury, it would have been great, but no. Actually, it went. The issue, having the state-of-the-art corrugator, the quality is excellent, the serviceability is excellent. The hard part is the labor force and training people and getting them up to speed, and so that takes a while. There's a lot of nuance, a lot of skill and experience required, and so to me the biggest challenge is the training and getting people to work. You got to get a third shift, a second shift. It's just difficult to get all the moving parts aligned, and then you just got to work with the machine and tweak it. But like I said, it's just tremendous to have everything under one roof.
More questions? We got a few more minutes. Well, actually, we have maybe just 5 minutes. So, any more questions? Just going to take a quick look and see if I can find a difficult one for them. But I think they've answered most of the questions that we kind of had talked about. So, maybe just each of you, if you could just wrap up just a minute or two and talk about what you see in the independent market, and what you see on sheet feeders and paper mills in the future. Just a couple of minutes, just kind of a summary, and then we'll wrap up. Okay?
Okay. Yeah.
You want to start, John?
Sure. As I said, I'm fairly bullish on what's going to happen in the marketplace and corrugated in general. I was in one of the sessions yesterday, but I think because of the Blue Planet 2 actions that we're seeing a little bit more coming. They're always more aware of the planet in Europe than we are here, and many times they get mandated, but we're going to see the same stuff happening here. But plastics, as it pertains to clamshells and other products that are many times inner packing of what we provide the outers for, those are going to move to corrugated, and they're going to move to corrugated microflutes. And so from our perspective, we see the need for some more innovation, but we see being ready to supply more microflute products, more lightweight products. And as I know there's been kind of a pushback with lightweighting with our integrateds in the US, but the European integrated groups and a lot of the independents and what you guys are both involved with from paper mills and certainly the Kruger guys here, lighter, stronger, better products are going to allow the independents to compete against the integrated guys who are still going to want to keep pushing their own heavier weight products. I think there's an opportunity there.
Good comments.
Yeah, just like I said, there's with the bigger guys getting bigger, the independents have a lot of opportunity as long as they can keep doing what they do best, is bring innovation and improve the service levels. It's just, and demand for packaging is going up. Obviously, we heard a lot about the Amazon effect and e-commerce. So It's nice to see that we're in a growth industry, so that's exciting, and just kind of whatever you make of it, but there's just a lot of opportunity.
Joe?
Yeah, we heard yesterday about the additional capacity coming on. It's from the paper side. You know, I think the integration levels of the integrated's integration level will continue, where they'll be buying independents, those that have some size in that, to kind of drive that number up there. But to what these guys said too, I agree, there's a place for independents below that line. I mean, the integrateds can't do everything, and nor do they want to do everything. And the way the market is and demands from customers, someone has to fill that need. And that's where a lot of us come into play, to continue to keep doing that. But I think the big will keep getting bigger, and the wheel will keep just turning.
Okay. Any other questions? It's your last shot. All right. Thank you all for coming.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, John. Nice job.